I left my office with a sigh of relief, Friday night approaching midnight. For the next 2 weeks, my wife and I were off to Spain for a beach vacation. It was my first time overseas in 33 years, all thanks to my wife winning a holiday from some catalog. She was prone to those things. Tricia was a wonderful wife, funny, smart, and way better looking than I deserved. But she had her quirks. Last year, she picked up a new hobby, witchcraft. She got a spell book from a new age shop, though I couldn't find the shop later. It probably closed down. It seemed odd, but I didn't mind. Her interest mostly involved coffee mornings and ordering stuff from catalogs. She even got a thick wool rug with a pentagram on it, which looked nice, by our fireplace. The drive home was chaotic, but I was relieved to escape for a while. Tricia had left me tea on the mantelpiece when I got home, though in hindsight, I should have been suspicious. I also found myself standing on that pentagram rug. As I finished the tea, noticing its strange aftertaste, Tricia walked in with a look that said she had something important to share. "Honey, I've got something to tell you." "It's about the holiday," I expected her to say next. "It's about our holiday. I know you've been excited for it, but things aren't going to go as planned." Why did I suddenly feel uneasy and nauseous, to top it off? "You see, honey," she continued, "when I entered the competition, I missed one of the rules. It was one of those magazines for single mothers and daughters." I groaned inwardly. I had been really looking forward to that holiday, and now I felt even more off-kilter. I started to speak, but Tricia raised her hand, cutting me off. "Don't worry though, I've figured out a solution. We can still go, but there will need to be some adjustments to our plans. You look exhausted, honey. I'll explain everything in the morning before we leave." That was the first sensible thing she'd said all night. Besides, I suddenly felt overwhelmingly tired. Before I could respond, dizziness washed over me. I couldn't even recall making it to the bedroom. The last thing I remembered was Tricia towering over me, as if I had shrunk several inches. The next morning, I woke to Tricia leaning over me, gently shaking my shoulder. My memory of the previous night was hazy, and I still felt strange, as if I had lost weight and Tricia had somehow grown taller. What on earth was happening? "How are you feeling this morning?" Tricia asked. "Like hell warmed up," I replied, my voice sounding oddly high-pitched, almost like my 14-year-old niece's. Suddenly, memories of the previous night flooded back, and I bolted upright in bed. Glancing down at my body, I couldn't believe my eyes. This wasn't my usual 5 feet 10 inches, hairy, overweight male frame. Instead, I saw the slender form of a young teenage girl. I dared a glance in the mirror. The reflection matched the body I now possessed. The face staring back at me was that of a cute girl with long blonde hair, a face I recognized, though I couldn't place it at first. Turning to Tricia, I demanded, "What did you do to me?" "We needed a holiday." "You needed a holiday," she exclaimed. "And then I won this competition. It seemed like fate. So I looked in that spell book I got and found this." "Okay, Gemma." "Spell book?" I whispered incredulously. This was too much to process. I needed to sit down. Then her words sank in. "Gemma? That's my niece's name." Suddenly, it clicked, where I had seen that face in the mirror before, though I couldn't bring myself to think of it as my own. I was the spitting image of my sister's kid. Tricia calmly explained that for traveling abroad, even within the EU, I would need a passport. The only way she could arrange one for me was by borrowing someone else's. I struggled to process this information. It certainly explained why my sister had been giving me amused looks lately, and why she had nearly choked on her coffee when I mentioned looking forward to the trip. I weakly attempted to argue, but deep down, I knew it was futile. I was eager for this holiday, and if this was the only way to make it happen, so be it. I told myself I could handle being a girl for a fortnight. After reassuring Tricia that I would manage, she left me to dress. Glancing at the clock, I realized time was short if we were to catch our flight. Tricia had laid out clothes for me, easy-to-wear panties and pantyhose, a small bra. I was 14 and not very busty, but it was still a challenge, a pale pink t-shirt, and a black skirt. I wasn't thrilled about the skirt, but I was in no position to protest. Dressing was a struggle, especially with my long hair. Finally, I finished off the outfit with pink trainers and grabbed a shoulder bag. As I checked my reflection in the mirror, a surreal experience in itself, a car horn sounded outside. Tricia's voice came floating up the stairs. "Gemma, taxi is here, get down here now, young lady." I thought that she was getting into her role just a little too much. I shouted back as I ran down the stairs. "Coming, mother." I tried to put as much sarcasm as possible in my voice. I was amazed by just how light my new body was and how much energy I had. It was just incredible how odd it felt. The trip to the airport and onto the plane was uneventful, although I did receive some lustful looks from the teenage boys at the airport and one or two of the adults. Dirty old men, I thought, and mentioned this to Tricia. She just smiled. I have to admit, I was very conscious of how much smaller I was now and how much bigger everyone else was. It was more than a little frightening. I also made a mental note, make sure I was less patronizing in future to teenagers. On the plane was another surprise waiting for me, the amount of legroom between the seats. Being a girl was definitely an easier way to travel, for once I could stretch my legs and relax. After we had been in the air for a while, I began to feel a familiar sensation in my bladder. It was then it dawned on me that going to the toilet was going to be a new experience. There were only 2 loose on the plane, and I smiled to myself as I heard some very strange noises coming from one of them. I guessed that the Mile High Club had 2 new members. Fortunately, the other was empty, and I slipped into it and locked the door. I wasn't sure whether girls were meant to pull skirts up or down to sit on the loo. I decided down would be the best bet. Peeing with female equipment was total different than ever before. Once I finished, I was careful to wipe, as I'd heard that women could get some nasty infections. As I wiped, I discovered that if I touched the right spot, I could get an almost electric thrill of pleasure. I decided to note that for later exploration. I wasn't about to start masturbating in a plain toilet. Once we arrived in Spain, the first thing that struck me was the heat. I nipped into the toilets and pulled my pantyhose off. It was way too hot for them. I was a bit apprehensive about going into a women's toilet and even more apprehensive about exposing my bare legs for all to see. I just told myself it was like wearing a pair of shorts. The trouble with that was that shorts didn't move in the slightest breeze like a skirt does. When I got back, Tricia had dug a pair of strappy sandals out of our luggage for me to wear. It made me wonder what else she had packed for me. I wobbled all over the place, even in the small heels on the sandals. After settling into our hotel room, Tricia and I perused the holiday brochure. I was dismayed to find out I was expected to attend the kids' disco. I protested that I wasn't a child but a grown man. My attempt to argue might have gone better had I not stomped my foot and loudly complained about the unfairness before sulking off to my room. It struck me then that I was starting to think and react like a teenage girl. After calming down, I sheepishly apologized to Tricia and admitted my concerns. She was empathetic and supportive, which made me feel oddly childlike when she hugged me. Eventually, she persuaded me to go to the kids' disco and even made the preparation process fun by suggesting different outfits for me to try on. I began to see the upside of being a girl as we turned the day into a fashion parade. Tricia covered the mirror in my room and surprised me with hairstyling and makeup. Applying eyeliner felt like a painful ordeal. I was convinced I was being stabbed in the eye each time. The outfit I settled on, a metallic blue sequin top and a short mini skirt, was revealed to me when Tricia unveiled the mirror. I felt like a teenage princess, surprisingly thrilled with the transformation, though I still struggled with walking in heels. The evening flew by as I danced with boys from the hotel and even found myself enjoying the music of Aqua and the Venga Boys. I made a promise to myself, as soon as I started liking steps, I'd reconsider life. After the disco, I ended up chatting with other girls from the hotel, trying to recall what my niece talked about and learning more about teenagers than I ever anticipated. It wasn't until I returned to our room that I realized I had just thought of my friends as the other girls. In one night, I had fully embraced my temporary girlhood. The highlight of the remainder of the first week was when I finally gathered the courage to step onto the beach in a bikini. I reasoned that if I was in Spain, I might as well enjoy the beach. I had initially chosen a nice black one-piece, but Tricia had different ideas and handed me an orange two-piece. It was then I realized how much our roles had reversed. I was responding to her as if she were my mother and I her daughter. I began to question whether I could ever revert to who I was. Had Jim Tranter disappeared? Was I even sorry to see him go? These were significant questions, and I wasn't sure I knew the answers. The rest of our holiday passed in a blur, and I had become close friends with the daughters of other vacationers. Julie, Emily, and Beth became my closest companions, and we were inseparable. When not with them, I spent time with Gordon, the boy from the disco, on the first night. I felt like I had almost completely transformed into Gemma. I was certainly happier as a girl than I had ever been before. Gordon was also the cause of a major argument with Tricia. Why did he have to give me love bites? Although I didn't try very hard to stop him. When it came time to leave, there were tears all around and plenty of exchanging of addresses. I must admit, I was the one crying the hardest. It didn't escape notice that my suitcase was much fuller than when we had arrived. I wondered what that said about me. Also, I had been quite persistent in questioning Tricia about her attempts at magic. During the trip home, where I mostly wore the expression of a sulky teenager, I pondered deeply about what I truly wanted. Did I really want to return? By the time we arrived home, I had made up my mind. I turned to Tricia and told her.